President leaves for Europe tomorrow morning, flies right into a major new threat from Russia. Today, the Kremlin said Moscow believes that NATO is already at war with Russia. NATO is at war with Russia. News to us, news to you. A week after violating the airspace of NATO member Poland, Putin's regime is complaining the West is acting like the aggressor in the region. They always play the victim. The UK decided to send Typhoon fighter jets to Poland. Remember, the world's worst war in human history began in Poland. And this now puts NATO jets within a few minutes of their Russian enemies. Former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, General Philip Breedlove, is with us. First, NewsNation's Robert Sherman, live where it is already early morning in Kyiv. Robert, good morning.
Hey there, Leland. Well, just in the last couple of hours here, we've heard the sirens blaring twice in Kyiv as Russia keeps the pressure on. But the tension is not exclusive to Ukraine. Romania, the latest NATO country in order to see Russian drones in its airspace, just days after that incident in Poland in which NATO fired its first shots of the war since this war broke out here in Ukraine in order to down drones in Poland. President Trump saying that he's ready to go on upping the sanctions on Russia if Europe lives up to its end of the bargain and starts weaning off of Russian oil. But the Kremlin today saying that all these tensions here are the fault of NATO. Dmitry Peskov, Kremlin spokesperson, telling reporters today, quote, NATO is providing direct and indirect support to the Kyiv regime. It can be said with absolute certainty that NATO is fighting against Russia. And as the president heads to Europe to meet with King Charles and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the war in Ukraine will once again be front and center. Leland?
Robert, thank you very much. General Breedlove now with us. General, good to see you. As always, put aside for a second the Kremlin spin. The second point I think is pretty interesting that Trump is making. Basically, the United States is willing to get tough if Europe does. Is the president right to point out that the Europeans want America to carry the burden and they can keep buying cheap Russian oil?
Well, first of all, Leland, good to be back on. And I think the president is using the tools that he's very good with. And that is, if you expect the United States to make sacrifices and to bring these tools to bear, then you have to come with us. And I think that's just what he expects out of our European partners.
This from The Atlantic, not exactly in any way a pro-Trump publication. Russia tested NATO in Poland. NATO flunked. A drone incursion shows the limits of an alliance without America at its head. Alliance members have not bothered to prepare properly for immediate threats, much less future war. Their constant weakness to this point has emboldened Putin to flagrantly violate airspace while reinforcing the idea that member states have no idea how to look after their own security. True?
Well, I don't disagree with anything there, but Leland, we have to be intellectually honest. The United States is not ready either. We could not think of this. Russia last week fired 800 drones in one night at Kyiv. No place in the United States is ready to defend that, and no place in Europe with United States help is ready to defend that. We all have a ways to go together, and so we need to be looking in the mirror as we attack this problem.
There's this theory that after 3.5 years of war, Putin is beaten down. You've made the point well that Putin is sending tens of thousands of men every week into the meat grinder. They're not coming home. But in terms of technology and how far Russia has advanced in these few years, specifically when it comes to drones and being able to fight with massive amounts of drones, cheap drones, rather than very expensive jets like you used to fly. Is there a case to be made that the Russians are actually in a stronger position militarily now than they were 3.5 years ago because, as you point out, America and Europe aren't ready?
Well, Leland, I think we need to remember what's happening to Mr. Putin's army. It's getting really torn up. And as you and I have talked before, the reputable numbers now are that the casualties are around 1.1 million men lost or so severely injured they can't ever fight again. So on balance, looking at all of what's happening to Russia, they're in a pretty tough space. But as you point out, they are making rapid advances in these cheap drones. I would offer to you, though, that Ukraine is beginning to build more sophisticated drones, and you're watching every day them strike POL facilities, explosive facilities, other drone facilities deep in Russia. So Russia is turning out the Shahid, and they are turning them out by the hundreds, and every day. And Ukraine is just building more sophisticated, long-range, precise weapons they can't build at the rate Russia is.
General, thank you. Coverage throughout the week with General Breedlove.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.